In one of our previous videos, we set up the radios and autopilot by using the modified keyboards. We get a lot of questions on how exactly we do this without any knobs. Here's how we do it. We assign the selection increase and selection decrease events to the control yoke. These two red buttons on the CH yoke. The SciTech yoke has a similar rocker switch. Then, when you choose an autopilot control or a radio frequency, etc., you can then set the value using those buttons. This is a natural position because your left hand stays on the yoke while you reach for the panel with your right hand. This is what you would be doing if you were reaching for the panel to twist a knob. So let's put this into use. Here's a little exercise using the default CRJ700 and some VOR tracking. This is just a demonstration, so we won't worry about ATC clearances or vectors. We're using the Universal Airliner Cockpit Enclosure, but the same steps apply with any of our projects that include the airliner keyboard modification. Let's take off from the Baltimore Washington International Airport, KBWI, runway 33 left. Set up fair weather. For this demonstration, we will start by tracking the 330 degree course to the Westminster VOR. Before we're airborne, let's set up the radios and autopilot. Press the nav select button to set the Westminster VOR frequency to 117.9er. Press the nav select button twice to select the decimal value. Press this button to set the frequency as the active. Press VOR1 ID to identify the station, if possible. You might not get a clear signal until after you take off. Press Course Select and set 330 degree course to the VOR. Make sure you're tracking the VOR, not the GPS. Now let's set up the autopilot. Select altitude hold, then altitude bug, and set the altitude for 7,000 feet. Select heading hold. The magenta line matches our current heading. We're already on the runway, so we don't have to set it to the runway heading. Verify flight director on. Verify autopilot off. At this time, save the flight. And I'll show you why at the end of the video. Use our CRJ700 checklist for correct procedures and airspeeds for takeoff and initial climb. You can print the checklist for free from our website. It's far more useful than the default checklist. Take off and climb the runway heading. Accelerate to 170 knots initially, then accelerate to 200 knots. Set speed hold when you reach 200 knots. turn on the autopilot. The autopilot is following the runway heading we set, the magenta dotted line. We have a good signal from the VOR, and we're close to intercepting the course, so switch to nav1 hold, and the autopilot will now navigate by referencing the VOR signal. Verify that the autopilot is intercepting and tracking to the VOR. When you reach 7,000 feet, the autopilot should hold that altitude at 200 knots. See the distance to the VOR counting down as you fly to it. Don't expect it to count down to 0, because you are over a mile above the VOR station. Now we're crossing over the VOR. We lose the VOR signal when nearly over the station. That's called the cone of confusion. Verify that the autopilot is tracking outbound correctly after station passage. You may need to help by switching back to heading hold while crossing over the station. And here we're intercepting the 330-degree radial from the VOR. Remember, VOR radials are a lot closer together when you're this close to the station. Now we're established on course again. We can switch back to nav1 hold. This little triangle here shows we're tracking from the VOR. Continue to track outbound on the 330-degree radial for about 20 miles. In part 2 of this video, we will set up a different course back to the VOR and use the autopilot to intercept and track the new course. You can print out a transcript of this video that lists every step we take during this exercise.